I'm at now.
Well, today is November 26th, 1998, Thanksgiving Day, and today is Dad's birthday, his 80th birthday, actually. And Dad was born 80 years ago, 1918. And Dad's name is Richard Haarstad, Richard John Haarstad. Actually, my name is John Richard. I'm the oldest son doing the interview here. I'm off the camera. And Dad was born on the old Haarstad farm, the original farm, about 12 miles south of Fergus Falls, back in 1918. And Dad, why don't you tell us something about my great-grandfather, or great-grandmother, which would be your grandfather and grandmother, Peter Haarstad. He came over from, what was his wife's name again? Johanna.
Johanna, there we are.
Yeah, they came over from Norway originally, both of them, didn't they?
Well, my grandfather, Peter, was born in 1843, of course, in Norway. Then he came over here, and then he got he came up from St. Cloud, I think it was, or down there, and he and Bernal Baki's grandfather dug a hole just on a hill just west of the farm where I grew up. It would be about 2 blocks west of the house on the old farm out there. And then they dug another hole. They lived there for some time, short while, a year or two. And then they dug another hole just south of the house where I grew up in, just 100 feet. And then they built the first part of the house from logs, and I think it was close to 1868 they built that. So most of my dad's brothers and sisters were not even born in the house that was built in 1868. They were born in a dugout. Then, of course, they added on to the house twice, so it got to be a good-sized house. And the picture I have here, of course, you've seen it too. It's the clothes they wore when they took that picture. When my dad was 2 years old, living in the ground just at that time almost, the clothes they wore were unbelievable. How they got, I suppose they rented them or something like that. But when you look at the picture and then you see all those young people there, and of course now they're gone for how many years? We won't even guess.
Well, here's a picture that Dad's talking about right here. And this is Peter's kids. I guess this is all his kids at the time, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You only had 5 kids?
Well, my dad is the youngest, and he'd be 2 years old about there.
Right, and but Peter only had 5 kids, right? Is that all he had? And Eamon was the youngest.
Well, we won't go into that because I think he had another one of the Holties.
Oh,
was half sister.
Half sister. So he actually had, I guess, 6 altogether, but 5 by Johanna.
But this is the main family, right?
Right. And this shows. Let's see, this is Randy Louise, this is Peter, who is my great-grandfather and Dad's grandfather. And this one here is Olga, and this is Johanna, his wife. Now is she from Norway?
Oh, I wouldn't know, but I would guess, yes.
Okay, because I think the family tree showed that both these were from Norway, and so that was 100% Norwegian at the time. And this is Eamon, who is my grandfather and Dad's father, and he's like, what, 2 years old at the time, I guess?
Yeah, about 2. Close enough. And he was born in 1881, so this picture would be taken about 1883, I'd say.
Okay. And this is Ivor and Albert. And you say Peter was born in 1843, you said?
1843.
And what year was it that he came over to the United States?
That I wouldn't know. But I suppose he was 20 years old or something.
20, so probably around 1863 or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
As far as you know, you first came to what, St. Cloud, Minnesota, and then
Well, down the, yes.
somewhere in that area, and then he moved up to Homestead. He actually homesteaded the land, and he got it for free, or just, or whatever, paid the fee and homesteaded it. Isn't that what happened?
At that time, John, that's the way they got all the land, was to go out there and say, this is mine, and live on it.
Pay a buck or something and record the fees or whatever.
No, that's a guess. I don't even know if they paid a buck.
So
But they just lived on the land, and then after so long a time, they got the land.
They're able to file for homestead fees, and that's actually a section at a time, which is 160 acres.
Well,
That's what the
I
farm
don't
is.
know. No, my dad, my grandfather got the original 160, but he had land quite a ways around there. In fact, east from the old place was what they call the Haarstad pasture. That would be a mile east. But all technicalities about this deal would be too darn much to even answer for me.
So in other words, he actually got more than 160 acres, I guess, the original homestead.
Well, he was the first permanent settler in Haarstad
Yeah.
Township, so how much he'd gotten, well, I'd say he got the quarter of land, and then he got the land south of there where Ivor lived, and we started to work it, and that was his land, and then he went east and got a bunch of land and put the cattle or horses on it, and that was his land. What? How are you gonna? It's no way to come to any solid conclusion unless you read about it in history and how it all went. They had a little technology then too, you know, not like now. You know, it's totally different. But how they could dress and how they could live out there was, you can just say nothing. Kind of shakes you now when you have to go to the stores and buy everything there is in the world. They're just
Have like one store or one general store where you could go and get everything, sort of like Walmart, kind of in a sense, but.
no. When you went in the store then, and when I was young, you went in the store, in the grocery store, you told them what you wanted, and they went and got it, and you paid for it and picked it up and walked out.
So you didn't really go around shopping from aisle to aisle.
You did not go around shopping from aisle to aisle. You walked in and told them what you wanted.
Gave them a list.
Told them what you wanted.
Or gave them a list, whichever.
Or whatever works out, you know.
I've seen that in the movies where they just, in the old Western days, they hand them a list, and this I want, I'll
Yeah,
get
well,
this
the
one, and
list
they
is
go.
the same as telling them.
Because they had everything kind of in bulk, and they'd just pull it out of bulk, and
Yeah.
however much they wanted, and
Yeah.
flour, and sugar, and staples, and all those kind of things.
And there was one fellow that lived by the Haarstad Church, you know, 3 miles from the Myrons, and I grew up with the Myrons, of course. But old Theodore Myron, that would be their dad. He, Harold still will remark about it, how he was said to the family, there were 3 boys and a girl, and the children in the family, and he said they needed, I think it was flour, and he said, I have to go and get some, we are all out, but he says it's going to cost a dime for gas, and I don't have it, so he had to take the horses in. And that was 10 miles with the horses, and if the horse walked 3 miles an hour, why, it would be over 2 hours to go and over 2 hours to come back.
Nothing was easy in those days necessarily.
Well, it's totally different now. You drive down the road and someone's behind you and they're going to turn a block in front of you, they'll pass you because they're in a hurry.
Yeah.
And they're complaining about the airplanes now, you know, they don't get into Los Angeles fast enough. And of course it's not going to stay as it is. It's going to change.
Everything's always changing.
Always changing is the way to put it, yeah. But even in the farm out there now, I think we paid $750 for our tractor.
Which tractor was that?
F12.
John Deere?
No, Farmall. The first one we got was a Farmall, and then after that we got a Model P John Deere. I don't know what year, but sometime afterwards.
What did they go by? They go by horsepower or something when you bought them, as far as price, sort of, or what did they go by?
Well, my dad wanted an F12 and the smaller tractor, not the bigger one, because it took less gas. Horsepower, it was only a little over 9 horsepower, and now the tractors are maybe 200-300 horsepower, so you'd have to have 25 tractors now pulling but those old tractors like that pulling the same power you get out of one now.
Yeah.
25.
Jeez.
Oh, shucks.
That's amazing.
Well, I used to go out in the field and work with that F12, and if you put the plow down in the ground just so far, it would keep going, and if you put it an inch or so more deeper, then it would stop it, you know. Didn't have enough power. And then you could work all day in the field, and if you wanted to see where you were at, you had to get up in an airplane to look down at the quarter of land to see where you worked. And now they go out with a tractor at 2 in the afternoon, and they're done with the whole quarter of land at 6.
Yeah.
The whole works.
Yeah.
No comparison.
Yeah, everything was slowed down.
Not, I would say even beyond slowed down, way beyond that. But
yeah.
Now the tractors are $100,000, and oats now I think is, what is it, $1.20?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, anyhow, if you saved all the oats you could grow for 50 years, you'd be able to buy a tractor and then didn't spend a penny for 50 years. It's terrible.
Yeah, it's amazing. You have to have a lot of land anymore to have a profitable farming situation.
Yeah, and even at that, it's, this year now, even at that wasn't profitable. Even if you had a lot of land, it wasn't. The price of grain is way, way down. It's so far down it isn't even reasonable. And of course, the doctors and lawyers and hospitals, they have to charge more because they need the money.
Well, it's a good thing we have HMOs, at least put somewhat of a clamp on it, otherwise it'd probably be even worse, more out of control.
Well, HMOs are no good anymore neither. You know, I think that it's gotten, the greed has taken over.
Yeah.
And even our hospital down here now, you know, they've bought old square blocks and parking places and built buildings, so they evidently made a few extra bucks. Of course, they didn't say it, but they evidently did.
Yeah, there's no financing available somehow. Well, let's get back to Peter now. He was born in 1843, and then about 20 years old, I guess he moved from Norway over to the United States. Do you know where he was born in Norway? What section of Norway, or what town, or anything like that? Or
No, but I think his name, from what I can remember, his name in Norway was Tuftlum.
that was his last name, you mean?
His name was Tuftlum.
And how did he get Haarstad then?
When the Norwegians came over here, they worked for Ole, and then they changed their name to Olsen, and they all changed their name. What the name the Norwegians have here, in comparison to what they had in Norway, was just another world. Total another world.
I thought his name was pronounced Haarstad over there in Norway or something like that.
I never heard of that, but all of them, they changed their name. They took they worked, came over here and worked for people, and then they took their name.
So he changed his name to Olsen at one time?
No, never.
You're just saying this.
I'm talking about people from Norway when they came here.
Yeah.
Young people, they came here and worked for people, worked for those around, and they took the name. whoever they worked for. If they worked for Hansen, well then they got to be Hansens.
So you're saying Peter worked for Haarstad and then changed his name to Haarstad, is what you're saying?
Tuftlum. Is what I understand. His name when he was in Norway was Tuftlum.
Well, then how did he get Haarstad then?
Don't even ask me.
So Haarstad isn't a real name, isn't a real Norwegian
There's
name?
of all the names in the United States, I suppose that how many are real names? Maybe 2% of them.
Well, maybe higher than that, but Haarstad, that is a Scandinavian name, so if he did change his name, he changed it to another
Well,
Scandinavian or Norwegian type name then.
It's impossible to answer that, something like that, how he did. But there's Haarstads all over. And there's Haarstigs, and there's Harstad, Haarstad. The one, my grandfather's half-brother in Newfold, their name was Haarstad, Harstad. Now the other one was Haarstad.
Half-brother? How did he get a half-brother?
Don't ask me. Don't ask me.
So you don't know what part of Norway he was born in or anything
I
like that?
tell you, I couldn't go into that. I don't know.
Well, what about when Mary Ann did the family tree? How'd she trace Haarstad back to Norway then? She had to search for the name.
Yeah.
What'd you say it was?
I'll tell you.
Tuflum? How do you spell that anyway? This name, this Tuflum or whatever it is.
I tell you, one thing to do.
You can just guess, take an educated guess on how you spell it.
No. One thing to do is wait till Mary Ann comes here today, and then ask her, because Mary Ann went into that and found it and wrote it down. Whereas with me, I maybe heard it, and how you're going to remember everything is impossible.
What was the name again?
Tuftlum.
Oh. So Mary Ann somehow figured that out and traced that
No,
back
I
to
don't know
Norway,
who
guess.
figured it out. I can't
Oh.
answer that. But if you ask that Mary Ann today, she can give you a lot better answers than I can.
Well, she went back to actually records in Norway, didn't she, searching out the genealogy and so forth?
She went and searched it,
But
and you'd have to read that.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of it. I'll have to get a copy of it from her. But she, what she did, actually write to Norway Chamber of Commerce or whatever, or something to search the records or something like that.
Wait till Mary Ann comes today and ask her where she got all the different information. That would be about the best way to do
Okay.
it. Because
All
I
right.
wouldn't know.
All right. So anyway, Peter, he was, like you said, was born in 1843. He moved here approximately at the age of 20, 1863 to the United States. Apparently worked with some people and changed his name then to Haarstad. And so he must have moved up to Farmstead, I guess, shortly after that. He was maybe, how old do you think he was when he settled into Haarstad Township?
No.
Maybe a few years later, 22 or 23 or
Well,
something?
some of the kids there would be, in that picture, wouldn't they be 15 years old or so? So if Dad was born in 81, they'd be born in, say, 68 or 65. So if he was, see, that would be, 63. Well, see, he came back in
66.
Yeah, see, that'd be up in there. Came back. But anyhow, when he came here, he didn't start to work for other people. He came up and they started to farm out there. And my grandfather had horses. He had as many as 100 horses. Over 100 horses.
And what did he do with all the horses then?
Well, what the farmers all around the country want to start farming.
So he sold the horses to other
Well,
farmers?
no, ask this here. What did farmers around want as far as horses are concerned?
Plow horses?
That was their everything. They didn't have tractors. The horses are the ones that did the plowing and everything. They did the cultivate everything.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as him having all these horses, he could sell them all over. That was something in real demand. Yeah.
So what else did he do? He farmed the land, he raised horses and sold horses. Did he have any other kind of animals on the farm? Or?
No. He didn't farm the land. He paid for others to come from Norway. He paid their way over here. And then they got to this country from Norway, and then they went out and worked for him and others, not just him, others, for free, and paid for their paid them back for their expense of getting him over here.
Hmm.
That's the way. So he had them out there working, and they were just making it back.
So he's sort of like to make an investment to help other people to come over to the United States from Norway, probably people, what, relatives of his, or just
Well,
whoever?
no, I don't think that have anything to do with it. He just paid for those who wanted to come here, whether they were relatives or what the heck ever they were.
I wonder how he found out about that or got involved
That's
in that.
the way that was life then.
Probably had an advertisement in the paper.
No, they didn't have a paper. That was life then. That's the way people lived. They came over and started to work for somebody, and then they got their citizenship, and even with the land out there, after you lived on the land so long, why, it was yours. You didn't have to go through a bunch of, just live on it. Just like you get a house down there and live in the house for 5 years, and it's mine now.
So, I guess, so when he came over from Norway, he came over, what, by himself then, or did he come over with anybody else, or?
I tell you, don't even ask me that. It's hard to. His half brother was up here in Newfold, so. But how that would be, it'd be beyond you. Yeah, no, his brother passed away out on the farm out here. I can't remember what his name is, but he passed away on the farm.
Half brother?
I think his brother. But how many there were in the family and all?
You don't know how many there were in the Peter?
Yeah, I tell you,
Peter's family.
they just, at that time, they just didn't keep records.
Yeah, they didn't really hand stuff down word of mouth or through Raymond or.
It was word of mouth because that's the way it is and that's the way it's going to be. But that's baloney. Just like a picture, we got a lot of pictures in the back there, and years ago they'd say, well, why write on that? Because we know who it is.
Yeah.
But time went by and now you don't know who it is.
Yep. So, now this Johanna, do you know where Peter met her or how he met her or
No,
anything?
that I wouldn't know. I've never heard of anything about that in particular.
But she was already obviously out in the States when he met her.
Well, that I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know a thing about that.
From the family tree, then apparently she's from Norway also, but I guess we don't know at this point where or how he met her.
No.
But do we know, how old was he when he met her? Do you know that, or?
Well, you just figured it out a while ago.
I guess
63, and then the first ones were born in 68. What? There's a little bit of time in between in there where.
Must have met her shortly after he got over here, then, or
Well,
shortly.
it's a good. I'd say from 63 to 68 would be a good short time to put it.
Now, what happened to some of his kids? For example, Randy Louise. Do you know what ever happened to her? One of his daughters.
Well, one of his daughters married a beau from over by Dalton, and then she died in childbirth.
She died while giving birth to her child, and her first child.
Well, that's what I said. Died in childbirth.
Right. So this is which one was that? Was that Randy Louise or Olga?
No, Randy Louise.
That was Randy Louise?
For that.
So she died while giving birth to her first child. I guess she was pretty young.
Well,
at the
she
time.
didn't die with her second. If she died in her first, she didn't die with her second.
So she must have been in her early 20s then, I guess.
I tell you, it's just
Something like that.
Well, she had to be young.
Yeah. What about his other daughter, Olga? Whatever happened to her?
Olga, that would be Mrs. Hogan. See, Mrs. Hogan Johnson.
The one in the middle there.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be Mrs. Hogan Johnson. I've got something in the basement. I should have gone and gotten it. It was about when she passed away. Maybe if you could turn it down or off, then I could get that.
Okay, we're talking about Olga, one of Peter's daughters, and we found out that Olga and Ivor are twins.
No, Albert.
Or Albert. Well, yeah. Olga and Albert are twins, and they're both born in 1972.
Yeah.
And this is Olga here, and this is Albert. They're twins, born in '72. And this is Ivor. And it looks like Ivor's probably the oldest, but Dad doesn't know for sure.
No, I wouldn't know.
So whatever happened to Olga then? You know?
Well, here'd be this here. There's no date on this, but she'd be Mrs. Hogan Johnson, and they lived in Fergus.
Okay.
And of course, Mrs. Irvin Noyes and Mrs. Arthur Peterson and Edna, Mrs. Jean Sweeney were kids.
Were her kids?
Yeah, and Leonard had an operation. He had to get gallstone or something, and it went bad, and he lost his life in 1937 or someplace in there.
Oh, this is an article on Hogan. This is Hogan Johnson, and this is Olga?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess, okay, Hogan Johnson was who she married then.
Yeah, I have a hard time to
Okay.
keep track of the different names. I'd almost have to have them written down, you know.
Grandma Johnson, the article says Grandma Johnson was daughter of first settler in
Peter.
Haarstad.
Yeah.
Which means, of course, daughter of Peter, the first settler in Austin. Now, how did Austin Township get its name?
Well, that's what I'd say is a hell of a good question to ask, because there's some out there that with almost the same name, and my grandfather was told that they were going to name the township after him. But then they didn't quite do that. Then they named it Haarstad, and then we did even have some people out there that took the name Haarstad. Now, how that went.
Be in the bathroom about 15 minutes.
Oh.
Right, so you're saying that supposedly they're supposed to name the township after Haarstad, but then supposedly they...
And Haarstad got in there, and I think if you were to ask 100 people, maybe no one could give you a perfect answer on it.
There's been surmised that the name was misspelled from Haarstad, Haarstad, and
Yeah.
changed it to 2 A's, Stad. Somehow
Yeah.
got misspelled and got into the books that way.
That'd be a good way to put it, I'd say. Misspell the name. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there weren't many houses around when that was there. There wasn't much of a Fergus Falls. And that's, it seems like it should be 500 years ago, but it isn't. It's only 130.
Now it says here, surviving Mrs. Johnson are 3 daughters, Mrs. Argyle Peterson
Yeah,
of
I just-
Alexandria, Mrs. E.S. Sweeney of Fargo. That was Sweeney's that we used to go and visit all the time. Was that actually E.S. Sweeney, or was that another generation down from that?
No, that's Mrs. Jean Sweeney. And, when I was in his brother, he had a brother Walt and a brother Jim Sweeney. I was in Guadalcanal in the South Pacific, and Walt Sweeney came up and visited me. And I think he's the one who was with his 2 kids in Fargo and got too close to the a dam, and the boat went over it, and they saved the kids, and he lost his life. And this is, of course, going back quite a few years.
So we used to visit the Sweeneys. I guess to me they were like second cousins then, or something like that.
Well, Edna Sweeney would be a first cousin.
Okay, the Mrs. Edna Sweeney was the first cousin then. Yeah.
Edna Sweeney.
Right, because she was the daughter of
Mrs. Hogan Johnson.
my great aunt.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it says also surviving was Mrs. Irvin Noyes of Fergus.
Yeah, Irvin, they lived together for years, and I even visited with one of the children, James, I think it was, and he lives he lives different states, but I think when he was back here a couple months ago, he lived in California. But anyhow, Ines and Erwin kind of separated or got a divorce, and she moved to Alexandria, and then she lived in town, and then she drowned taking the garbage out one morning. It was in the spring, and she took it out, and there was water running and ice below it, and she slipped on the ice and fell in just some water that was along the curb and took her.
She must have got knocked out or something and just...
Well, if she hadn't gotten knocked out, she'd have gotten up.
Right. Well, obviously it wasn't that deep to where she drowned and...
Oh, no, it was just water in the curb.
Yeah, so she got knocked out and fell face first in the water and drowned.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was really an odd, as odd as anything could be, I'd say.
Okay, make sure you speak up a little bit so to make sure we get a good, can hear good in the
Oh, yeah.
camera there.
Yeah.
And then it says also this Mrs. Hogan Johnson, who was Peter's daughter Olga, also was survived by 3 stepsons, 1 stepdaughter.
Yeah. See, Hogan was married before.
Okay, yeah. She was married before, and see, the 3 stepsons and 1 stepdaughter is Edwin of Chicago, Walter of Detroit, Michigan, Mrs. Chaz Thurbright of Lombard, Illinois, and George of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And it says surviving also are 11 grandchildren, 1 brother, who was Eamon Haarstad of Haarstad, who is my grandfather, Dad's father, and a sister, Mrs. Thea Holte of this city.
Now, she'd be a half-sister like this thing.
Well, that was a half sister. I guess Peter got involved with the Holte at one point or something and had a daughter by her.
No,
Or now.
no, it was someone who worked out on the farm.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Maid or whatever it was.
had a daughter by the maid or whoever it was he got involved with out at the farm, and I guess she married a Holte and became Mrs. Thea Holte, who was in a half. I guess it'd be his daughter, but actually a half instead of a great. Instead of a great aunt, it'd be like a great half aunt or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, and of course there's quite a few of those Holtes, even one of them was married in Elliott. And of course it's getting to be, well, it's gotten to be so many that it's hard to keep track of it. But like this Chuck Elliott, that's maybe the one you talked to, is it?
I don't remember what his first name is.
It might be, some distant relative.
Eamon would probably know. So anyway, now when Peter had this or when he had this daughter through, I guess outside of marriage or whatever, did that cause problems with his marriage then, or did she know?
Don't even ask me.
Nobody, don't really know.
Don't even ask me.
But he stayed married to
Yeah, but
Johanna the whole time.
Yeah, but she passed away about 19 and 10 or something in there.
Oh.
And of course Peter, I think, was 1924. He passed away. I can remember him out on the farm. He liked to buy mints, these white mints. And I can remember him sitting in a chair by a window there, and he just enjoyed eating those mints.
Is that about the only thing you remember about him, pretty much? Because you're only, what, you said 5 years old when he died then, apparently.
Yeah,
1924, he'd say he died. So
Yeah.
you were only, what, 6, I guess? You were born in 1918.
Well, no, you don't count 18. You count 19.
Well, yeah, it depends on what month he was born, or died in 1924, so I guess you're like 5 then.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Now, when was this Mrs. Thea Holte born? Do you know what year she was born in?
I tell you, I can't answer.
Somewhere, was it before Johanna died then, apparently, in 1910? Somewhere before that, I guess.
I tell you, I just couldn't answer any of those. You'd have to ask some of the...
Yeah, it must have been before 1910, though, because I would imagine it was back when he was a little bit younger.
Well, in 1910, she'd be so old she wouldn't have any children. You'd have to go back to the 70s. Of course, my dad being the youngest, born in 81, so you'd have to maybe go back before that. From 1910, you might have to go back 30 years. It's hard. Unless you get absolute information on it, it's impossible to come to a perfect conclusion.
Okay.
Even with me, I have a hard time to remember the particular names of all of you know. Well, I stayed at the Hogan Johnson house there for quite a while. I worked, painted, and, up in Fabian Farm, and worked for Irvin, that did all kinds of different work.
Irvin, who was Irvin?
Irvin Noyes, yeah.
Who was your?
That's the one right on there. Highness.
Oh, okay. And let's see, he was, what relationship to you then?
He?
Yeah.
She, I mean.
Oh, Irvin is a she?
No.
You said
No.
you worked for Irvin Noyes.
Yeah.
And he was married to
Ines.
Ines.
Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Mrs. Hogan Johnson's daughter.
Mrs. Irvin Noyes. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
That would be Dad's sister and her daughter.
Okay, so you're working basically for your aunt then, in other words.
No, I was working for Irvin Noyes.
Right, but your aunt's husband then, basically.
Well, she'd be a cousin of mine, a first cousin. Ines
Okay,
would be a
yeah.
first cousin.
Okay, because
And Irvin built a house on West Cavour in the 800 block, or 900 block. Anyhow, he built the house out there. I remember out there working with building the house. And then they lived in that house for some length of time, and it was a nice house. And then they sold it and bought the house next to it. In other words, they built the house just exactly as they wanted it, and then they found out they liked the house next to better. So but I go and visit Irvin Noyes now. He lives out on Wall Lake.
Oh, he's still alive.
I visited with him here. He lives on the north side of Wall Lake.
How old is he now then?
Well, he ain't young.
90s?
We're close in there.
Okay, so actually this Mrs. Irvin Noyes is really the daughter of your great aunt, because Olga would be your great
No.
great aunt.
No. She'd be a first cousin of mine.
Right.
Ines.
Right, but Olga's still a great aunt to you, and I'm just saying that she's be a daughter of a great aunt, which makes her like a first cousin, I guess.
Well, she'd be.
It'd probably be more like a
She'd be
second
my
cousin,
dad's.
I think.
She'd be my dad's sister.
Not your dad's sister, your grandfather's sister.
No, my dad and Olga were sisters.
Oh,
Brother
okay.
and sister.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that does make her an aunt then.
Yeah.
Okay, your aunt's daughter then. Okay, yeah, that'd be a first cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I'll keep all this stuff straight.
I have cousins now. If they were around, they could be 130 years old.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, we're talking about Peter's kids, so this would be, we're talking about your aunts and uncles and so forth, and of course, Amy being your dad.
Well, see, he would be the baby in the family, and he was about 38 when I was born. So, how about those that were older than him and had kids back in 1800? So, it's just.
Yeah, any of their kids probably wouldn't hardly be alive anymore, except for, like you said, the one.
None of them are.
Oh, except you said Ivor is.
Ivor's got Edwin. And what we should do when you're here is should have called up and see if Edwin is home and stopped out and seen him. Be nice to go and just. I've stopped by his house a couple times and driven that way out, and I've never found him home. So But of course, Clara's in the home in Fergus, so she's had some troubles. I guess Edwin goes in it quite a bit.
Okay.
But maybe we should call it good now. It's 9:45 so I get those cakes.
How much time do you need?
Well, turn it off.
Last we were talking about Olga, who was one of Peter's, my great-grandfather's daughters, and we mentioned that she had a twin brother. His name was Albert. We were talking about Olga, and we went through some of her offspring. Now, what do you remember about Olga? I mean, what did she do as far as a living, or did she ever work or do anything, special in her life or anything like that you know of, or anything that you heard about, or?
Well, she married Holman Johnson, and he had a store downtown here. And I remember they offered it. My dad could have bought it, I think, for $1,200 or something.
Speak up just a little bit.
Well, no, I think, but he could have bought it for a small amount. But of course, at that time, you didn't have that much money right handy. And of course, what it'd be worth a few years later would be a big guess, but it'd be an awful lot more.
What kind of, was it like a general store or something?
Yeah, it was a store on East Lincoln there on the left-hand side. 100 block of East Lincoln on the north side.
Would that be like the downtown part of Fergus Falls today, or?
Well, when you go down in the main intersection of Lincoln and Mill, it's the 100 block right off of the Lincoln, there, just east.
Okay, so she didn't really work then. She was just like a housewife, I guess, basically raising kids.
Well, I suppose with all the kids, it would give you a heck of a lot of choice. But if she's ever worked any place, why, I think she did something, but I wouldn't remember what it was now.
Okay, this Randy Louise, did she ever do anything that you can recall or know about as far as?
Oh, you mean that's the young one?
The young one, as far as the,
she was married young and passed away in childbirth.
That was about it. She didn't really have a.
Otherwise, I've never heard of anything.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Albert then, who is a twin to Olga. And in the picture that we showed earlier, they're both about 12 years old because they were both born in, or about 11 actually. They're both born in '72. The picture was taken in about '83. So what about Albert? What can you tell me about him? What did he do in his life? Do you know anything much about him?
Well, Albert had the farm right east of us, right along the road.
Going towards Mud Lake?
No, east and a little north. From the farm out there, you go east.
Yeah, well, I don't know the directions that well, Dad. You have to kind of.
Mud Lake is straight south.
Mud Lake is south, okay.
And this would be east and a little north.
East, okay, all right.
Be right along the road there was Albert. Of course, they had several kids, And Mrs. Edwivey would, her mother, they live in Arizona now. She went to school when I went to school, so she's not young. And her mother would be a daughter of Albert. Yeah, but for me to keep track of all of them now, Elmer lived down by Elbow Lake, and I'd have to get all the names up. It gets too many names to keep track of.
Right, so Albert had inherited a farm, I guess, a section of farming, farm east of the.
Well, I don't know.
Did he inherit from Peter then, or?
Yeah, he inherited the farm.
About 160 acres or whatever.
In there, but then he also claimed another hunk of land that Ivor said so too, and he claimed some that should have been my dad's. So my dad got part of the quarter of land that I grew up on. Part of it, and he had to pay the others for the rest of it, and the rest of them got 2 farms. In other words, it looks like finagling would be the word.
a little bit of family manipulation.
No, not I didn't say family. I said greed. greed works for money, whether it's family or somebody in China. Greed is money.
So, so your dad, for the 160 acres that your dad ended up with, he had to actually end up paying for some of that land rather than inheriting it.
I think he had to pay for 40 acres of it.
So you were supposed to have gotten 160, but Ivor or somebody laid claim to the other 40 acres. You know,
Well, they did it. Don't ask me how. Don't get down to fine points, please.
well, you know, I can ask if you don't know.
Yeah,
then
I
you
know.
just say you don't know. That's as simple as
It's
that.
impossible. It's too much.
You know, I might ask questions and you just tell me what you know. If you don't know, then you don't know. It's simple
Well,
as
you
that.
wouldn't know, but someone said that Peter in a lockbox in Dalton had this all made up, and then Ivor went over there and took some of it out.
Huh.
So he got more land.
Huh.
Of course, my dad and mother, took care of Grandpa. They came back from Portland, Oregon.
Somebody should take somebody to court there.
Well, the United States at that time wasn't the lawsuit country. See, now we don't live in America anymore. We live in the lawsuit country.
Yeah, except you know why they have lawsuits now after that happened.
Well,
All right, let's not digress
no,
here now.
Off the beaten track
no,
now.
no.
Forget it.
Lawsuits are money.
All right, let's not digress here. We got to keep this organized now.
Lawsuits are big dough for the guy for the fella who thinks a lot of you, not of putting money in his own bank.
All right, let's not get into all the opinions here. Let's get back to the history of the Haarstad family here. Okay, so anyway, so Albert ended up with about, I guess, 160 acres of land, and he inherited that from Peter. That was what, east and northeast of the farm. Who inherited after him? His sons or anybody that I would know? Or
Well, of course, how that went, I wouldn't even want to guess how they arranged that. That gets too complicated.
yeah,
No. But Benny ended up in the old farm.
Benny listening?
No, Haarstad.
Benny Haarstad. Well, who was that? Albert's son?
Yeah. He ended up on the whole farm and lived there all the time as a bachelor. And he was down in the barn and walking to the house, and that ended for him right there.
A heart attack or something.
Well, whatever it was. Anyhow, Benny bought his car, a 19, whatever it was, 37 Ford, from a fellow in Dalton who sold cars, and the guy in Dalton made $3 on the sale. And of course, Benny was happy because he got the car real reasonable. Well, years ago, that's the way it was.
All right, now, what about Ivor Haarstad? Where, he inherited some land too then, I guess.
Yeah, he was the one south of there too,
South of there, towards Mud Lake.
Not towards Mud Lake, on Mud Lake.
Okay, so you inherited the land adjacent to Mud Lake then.
Well, it'd be all the land south of the farm where I grew up. It'd be all the land all across way over to a mile, 3/4 of a mile east, and all the land to the west edge of the farm where I grew up. He ended up with it all.
So how many acres was that, or approximately?
Oh, gosh,
more than 160 acres, more than a section, huh?
It would be, I don't know. Well, a section is 4 quarters.
No, a section is 160 acres.
No?
Yeah. Or no, that's right. A section is 640 acres.
There you
So
go.
what Eamon got was 160 acres, was actually a quarter section.
Yeah.
So the original homestead was what, a whole section then, 640 acres that Peter had?
I tell you, he lived out there. He had so much land, you'd have had to. It's impossible to pin it all down. He had a whole bunch of land around, and whatever he was on, well, even the Haarstad pasture, that would be east of the farm, and then southeast, and there was a whole bunch of hills, kind of, and stuff in there. Of course, he had that for the cattle to go out and graze on.
So Ivor, he apparently inherited then actually probably more than a quarter section, more than 160 acres. I might
Well,
have half section or 3/4 a section or whatever. Don't really know for sure.
Some called him Ivor the Conniver, so you can guess what the hell ever you want to guess.
He probably apparently was the oldest son. It looks like the oldest son in the picture. We don't
Yeah.
really know for sure, but
Ivor figured out ways, and
must
then
have been the oldest.
yeah. And then of course Palmer ended up with the land, and then Ivor moved out in the west part of Austin.
Who's Palmer?
Well, he just passed away a short while ago.
Yeah, but was he Ivor's son or who's?
Well, naturally Ivor's son.
Well, you gotta explain it for the camera. You know, we don't know
Yeah,
necessarily.
yeah. It'd naturally be his son. It wouldn't be.
So Palmer,
You know, neighbor.
Palmer Haarstad was Ivor's son, so that would be. Let's see, that would make him. See, Ivor would be my
Great uncle.
great uncle. Okay, so Palmer would be like a whatever, second cousin or something like that. To me, I guess. Okay. Palmer and Lillian aren't alive anymore, are they?
Yeah, Lillian's still going, but she doesn't know where she's at.
Where's she staying now?
Well, the home down there,
Pioneer home? Oh, okay. Palmer died. How long ago did Palmer die?
not too long ago, I suppose. I don't know, around the time Pete passed away, maybe 10 years ago now.
Pete
I
passed-
can't keep track of it, time goes too.
Okay, Pete passed away in 1980,
Years ago.
1988.
Yeah.
February something of 1988.
Mhm. Yeah, so
Uh,
Pete,
no.
so this February now,
Yeah, that's right.
Pete will be gone 11 years.
Right. Okay, so Paul, now who farms the land now? Do they hand that down then? Or I guess Lillian still owns it, or what do they do with the land now, or who's on the land now? Paul Palmer's land.
Well, it's, one of the Leans live there, but how they farm the land now, you know, all the land now, it isn't a farmer that goes and starts to farm a quarter of
Yeah.
land anymore. They rent it out, and I think you'd have to ask Mike as to the situation there. It's too much
Okay.
for me to keep track of.
Who are the Leans?
Well, they grew up right south of me. They're Peter Lean and Evelyn.
Are they related
Yeah.
to the Haarstads, or
No, but they had, their farm was right next to it.
just neighbors, in other
Yeah,
words?
just close neighbors. Yeah. Pete's been gone a long time, Peter Lee. Yeah, I met him out at the Fleet Farm, and I couldn't get over it how he changed. You could just tell that he was, you know, close to the end, the way he acted. And it was a short while afterwards, and of course that's what I've seen many times when we start to be totally different. That it's for a reason. And your ma was one example too. There, boy, I tell you before, it was quite a change.
It was medication too.
Well, everything, I think. Medication and your attitude and how tired you get and everything.
Okay, now let's talk some more about Peter. What kind of stories can you tell about him, or what? I mean, he grew up on the farm. He was the original homesteader. He raised horses and plow horses and sold them to the neighbors. Made money that way. He
Sold them to people, I'd say, not neighbors.
not necessarily neighbors, just to whoever
Yeah.
in the area, whoever wanted to buy horses. And did you say he also farmed the land, or
Yeah.
did he farm the land?
Well, he paid for immigrants come in from Norway. He paid for it their way, and like I
Right.
said a while ago.
And then they came in and they.
And they worked to get, you know, pay them back. That's the way they did it all over. It
Okay.
wasn't just there. That was the way it was in the United States.
All right, and then what is that all he did? I mean, did he have other animals on the farm besides horses, or
Well, they had the cattle.
he had the cattle, and they would milk the cattle and sell the milk, I guess, and butcher them
Well,
from
my
time to
dad-
time. And,
That's what my dad did, was haul the milk to Dalton.
uh-huh.
And of course, you put the car up in the wintertime,
Right.
put it on blocks, and he took the horses and went to Dalton. And took the milk in, and for a long time too, we sold the milk in Fergus. I suppose that'll be after that again. They had the creamery down here where the parking lot is now. That's where we went by and I remarked about the creamery. Used to be there.
Now, did he have any other animals besides cattle and horses, or was that it?
I don't know.
You must have, I imagine you had pets as dogs or cats or whatever, but not no other.
I don't know about dogs and all of that. But the main thing out there, of course, were the horses, and then all, like I said, so many of them it's beyond your imagination. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Horses and cattle. You didn't have pigs or sheep or
That, of course, I
anything
would,
like that.
that I wouldn't remember. I wouldn't.
Okay.
When I grew up, and of course, we always had pigs. You know, then we had pork, and that's the way you get pig, and then they butcher. And like one time, they butchered a big steer, and I think it weighed about 2,000 pounds. And my mother canned the steer, and then we had canned meat, and people would come there, friends would come, and when she'd open cans of meat for them, and nothing was any better than those good canned meat. But I think she had to boil it on the old wood stove for 3 hours or something like that, a long, long time anyway.
Huh.
You know, to get it all well done.
So, is there anything else about Peter that you can remember? I mean, did he, go on any trips anywhere, or did he make any investments in anything like the stock market or anything like that, or land or anything
That
in particular? Or?
That I don't know of. You know, you maybe have heard some of that stuff, but then you hear it, of course, forget it. Yeah, somehow you could. Of course, when you were out there, you know, years ago, you just took it for granted. That's the way it was. You know, which is kind of bad to do, but at the same time, I guess that's the way it is even now. We take things for granted. We forget that after so long a time, why someone will be wondering. Yeah.
So, are there any other stories that you can think of that you remember about your grandfather that you can tell us, that you heard, or anything in particular?
Of course, I'd be so young then you wouldn't.
Well, stories you heard from your dad that he passed on, or anything like that, or
No, I wouldn't know of anything.
Well, how did he live his life? What did he like to do? I mean, did he like to entertain? You said, I think at one time he used to like to entertain as far as neighbors or.
Well, that was my folks.
Well, that was Dad.
Yeah, that was my folks who would come in there, but it wasn't a case of entertaining. It was a case of so much then. It was so much different now. We get on an airplane and go to Los Angeles. At that time, you were just glad if you got to go see someone from Dalton,
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
Well, is there anything else you can tell us about Peter? I mean, what was the guy like, or what was his life? Was it pretty much just farming and raising the cattle and the horses? And I mean, did he have any hobbies that you know of, or anything? Anything that would be distinct that you can think of about him at all? That you know of, or
I'd have to figure that out or think about it for some length of time.
Okay.
Maybe when I'm sleeping at night, I'll wake up and dawn on me something.
All right. Well, if you think of something down the road, we can add it in later. Just trying to document a little bit about Peter, or my great grandfather, Dad's grandfather. What he was like and so forth.
But anyhow, what we maybe talk to Bernal Baki, he might have heard things, because his grandfather and my grandfather were, together.
How does Bernal Baki fit into the picture? You said
The same as me?
just friends. I mean, you said his grandfather and
And
Peter
my
were like friends, basically. Or?
They came up together and dug a hole together.
Oh, okay. They came over from Norway together.
Well,
just from Minnesota, wherever.
Of course, when they joined hands, I wouldn't even want to guess. It could even be on the ship coming over.
Could have been the ship, could have been when they got
Lord
here,
only knows
Minnesota or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyhow, they came up to this part of the country together and dug a hole together.
So that's how
that
they started
answers-
friendship, and then this, what was his name? Baki,
Would it be Andrew Bucky or? Oh, I'd have to think of that.
and that would be Burnell's
Grandfather.
grandfather.
Same
Okay,
situation
right,
like mine.
Right. Okay, so you and actually you're a little bit older than Burnell. How old is Burnell now? He's 70 something, I guess. 75 maybe, or I guess he said he's getting close to 80, but must not be quite there yet.
Well, his brother Donald is older than me, and Burnell is younger than me,
Yeah.
and they're in between. I'm in between them, so you can guess what Burnell is now. Maybe 77 or 78 or something in there.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I never knew how Burnell fit into the picture, of how you knew him. I know we used to go over there and hang out with his kids and play games and go over there often and stuff like that, but I never really knew how he fit into the picture.
Yeah, Burnell is, and of course now Burnell's getting up there now, where he's my age. So, but they sold their house on Vernon Avenue, and he likes it where he lives at the Pioneer Point, South Sheridan. They both like it there. And I guess I asked him the other day, and he said that Ruthie was doing better now that she was around a place where there was more around. See, when they were in the house, Burnell could hardly leave her because she just hunt for something or do something just that made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, well, she had, what was that called again?
Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's disease. That's what Ronald Reagan has.
Yeah.
So it just destroys your brain. You can't really function after a while very well. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about Ivor and Albert. Now I guess they both.
Yeah, I know it too.
Here, what's wrong? I always stop. Talking about Ivor and Albert. Now they both ended up being farmers. I guess basically that was their living, was farming the land.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you can tell me about either of them, that you heard anything about them, or anything in their lives, that anything that sticks out that you know anything about either of them as far as what they accomplished in their lives, or I guess basically they're just farmers and handed their land down to their offspring and so forth.
Well, they were both, especially Ivor. He was one of these who was like you find them today. You know, never satisfied and wanted more and would do anything in this world to get more. And that's what we have today. They'll do anything to, well, even here now, when I had worked on televisions in the basement for years, and
Well,
Oh, okay.
here, I'll stop it.
What was I talking about again?
Just make sure you speak, loud enough so that make sure it picks it up in there. Because if you speak real soft, it might not pick it up quite as.
What was I talking about again?
You're talking about Ivor and greed and how he always was trying to get as much out of everything as he could, I guess.
Oh yeah, I know what I was going to start to talk about was working in the basement on the televisions years ago. People carried them down, but the way it's getting now, or has been for a few years, you can work on televisions or radios in the basement and earn $300 in a year, and someone will come down and trip on the floor, and then you got an $800,000 lawsuit.
Yeah. So how are you trying to relate that to Ivor then?
I'm conditioned is what I'm talking about. But anyhow, what I'm talking about, brought up was like with Ivor, he was figuring out ways to make more money. And of course now, then you got the others figuring out ways to make more money. Even on your sidewalk, if there's someone slips, well then they want to sue you, for that.
Well, what did he get involved in now? I mean, you say trying to figure out ways to make more money. Was it just land, or did he invest in stocks, or did he invest in anything else?
Of course, that I wouldn't know. We should go out to Edwin's and ask him. That would be, that'll be a heck of a lot. We try to go out there tomorrow.
Edwin Haarstad.
Yeah,
Now Edwin Haarstad is, how's he related in the picture again?
he's Ivor's son.
Ivor's son, okay. And he's, oh, you said he's still alive, obviously, but he's like, what, in his 90s or something, or up there pretty good then, I
He's
guess.
up in there pretty good.
Where's he live, on one of the farms out there? Or?
No, ask me where he lived and then I'll tell you. He lives south on the Wendell Road and then just by the county line and then west.
Just
So he lives about 8 miles from the old farm.
Okay, so he's like just on a plot of land in a house. He's not really living on a farm per se then, or?
Well, they have, yeah, the farm is, where he lives, I think, is 80 acres.
Oh, okay.
But he lives on it, got a nice home, and it's a nice place.
Probably just rents out the land to somebody else to come in there and farm it and that
Well,
sort of thing.
that's all you do now, anyone. If you talk to 100,000 farmers, they'd all be renting their land out. There'd only be 25 people working. Shucks.
All right, well, that, I think is about as much as we can put down about all of Peter's kids, except the only one we haven't talked about now is Eamon, the youngest. He was 2 years old in this picture that I showed earlier, which was taken around 1883, the picture was. And Eamon was born in 1881. Eamon is my dad's dad, and of course be my grandfather. Now, let's just take a kind of a snapshot of what the farm looked like in Peter's days. Let's say up to the point of where Eamon was born. If you went up to the farm, you looked at it. You say he built the original log cabin house, and that was like what year was that built in? Then do you figure?
Well, maybe 1878.
1878, maybe like 3 years before Eamon was born, apparently.
Yeah, in there. That's a guess, of course.
So Eamon was probably the first one that was actually born in the house. And
very good possibility.
the others were born in basically what was a hole in the ground that was covered up with wood, I guess, as far as a place to live goes. And so at that point, the point that Eamon was born, I guess the only thing that was there then was just the original log house, a small log house, the original where the kitchen is today, I guess, basically the old house.
Kitchen today.
And what else was there? Were there any other sheds there? Must have been some sheds there for the horses and stuff, or?
Well,
The barn wasn't built then, was it, or?
Well, let me just ask and then I'll try to answer. But the first barn was built where you go in the driveway there on the north side. You know, when you go and turn in. You know, you come up the road and you turn in. It was right on the left.
Where all the farm implements are kind of sitting
it's
today over in there somewhere?
No, it's right to the left when you turn in. See, you go north and then you turn into in the woods and towards the house, and it was right on the left.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where Mike where Mike's old garden, Mike's garden. He had a garden right there.
There you
right
are. There you are. That's
Okay.
where Mike had his garden.
That was the original barn or whatever then.
That's the original barn, but the big barn was built in 1898.
Okay. So I guess Eamon would have been about 17 years old then when the big barn was built.
Yeah. Then of course then after he's the only one I think that ever got to go to school. He went to school, you know, and then he came up to the state up here and he worked at the bug house. They called it that.
State hospital.
Well, they called it the bug house then.
That's what we call it when we were kids, the bug
Yeah.
house.
Anyhow, and
Maybe they got that from you, huh?
no, I think that was called the bug house by everybody before I was around at all.
Well, I was just wondering how I started calling it that, whether I just made it up myself or heard somebody say it.
They had to change the name on it. They changed the name on everything now for as a legal matter. That it wouldn't sound good, you know. Well, Stanton Avenue down here was Nigger Street. You know, and of course they wouldn't leave it as Nigger Street, would they? Change it to Stanton. But anyhow, Mother then came and she came over from Ireland. She took care of her brother, who was a priest, Father John Walsh, and then she went to school and got to be an operating room nurse. So she came up here and was an operating room nurse, and that's, of course, where the two of them met in 1910.
They met where then?
And they came, my mother came up here and got to work in the operating room nurse, and my dad was on the ward working. And that's where they met, was at the bug house.
She was an operating room nurse at the state hospital then?
Well, you can call it the state hospital, but I don't think at that time they called it the state hospital.
Right.
They called it the bug house.
Okay, well, she was an operating room nurse there. In other words, whenever they, they actually did operations right up there at the
Well, I suppose some.
bug house or whatever they needed to do.
Well, I suppose some. You know, at that time they weren't too much developed downtown here, were they? There was no big hospitals. The Wrights, you know, who started Otter Tail Power, they started the Wright Hospital. And of course that hasn't been there for years. It's the Otter Tail Power building there now. It's off, you know, Cascade in Washington.
That used to be the old Wright Hospital or something at one time?
Yeah, I
They tore the
remember
building down. and
You
put up
maybe
the-
remember that.
Not really, but then you're saying they tore the building down and put up the Otter Tail Power building.
Yeah, it's a huge Otter Tail Power building there now. In fact, that whole area way east there for 2 blocks is all big power company. You know, they've gotten bigger and bigger. So
Okay.
they had to have more space and more space.
Yeah. All right, now you're talking about Eamon now. He said he worked at the ward up there at the state hospital. Then, I mean, what did he do, or what kind of work did he do then?
Well, took care of the nuts.
Took care of the patients. And
Yeah, the nuts, you know, moved them and whatever they needed to do. You know, and at that time, in fact, I was up there with Emil Allen and of course the folks, and we when we went up there, why Emil Allen was in charge of most of it. He's the one that gave me that Parker double-barrel gun. And of course, when my folks went up there and we took some other friends up, why he took us or let us go around where people couldn't go. I mean, if you were just wanting to look, you couldn't go there. But we got special treatment. This one place, I never forget, they stopped there and they had these straight jackets there. And when the patient got too bad, they tied him up in these straight jackets. And of course now I think they've stopped all that. They give them drugs and everything else, you know.
rather than straight jackets, yeah. Huh.
In other words, they made it illegal to use a straight jacket on someone and tie them up and instead of giving drugs, you know.
All right, well, let's go back to when Eamon was born and what the farm looked like at the time. Apparently there was just a log cabin house, which was a kitchen now, the old house there, and then there was a small barn which was originally located just to the left of where you turn into where the road actually, where the driveway actually turns in towards the house. Just to the left of there was the old barn. And what was the size of it? I guess it was pretty small. What was it?
That I wouldn't know.
Keeping horses in it, or
that I wouldn't know the size of it. It looked like from where it was there that it was, you know, a decent sized building. Yeah, it looked like a pretty good decent sized building.
And what did they use that for? Just for the horses?
I suppose horses and whatnot.
Cattle too, or
But how they used it, it's only a guess. Absolutely a guess. And of course then that kind of deteriorated, and then they built the barn.
Okay, now so that looked like it was a pretty good sized building. If you walked out there today, would you be able to see any remnants of the old building at all, or tell it was there in any way?
Well, Mike has worked out there, you know, put the garden in, and he planted, I think it was squash there in one place, and my golly, it grew for 15, 20 feet, the stems. But anyhow, he found nails in there too that were left, you know, these old square nails.
Square nails from the old barn.
From where he put the garden.
And that's the only remnants you really saw. You can't find like any cement or anything like that, or anything left over.
I think that takes care of it.
Or no buildings are still left. Silos or anything, nothing like that. So it's really,
I think the nails take care of everything.
nails about the only remnants that you could see of it. I guess with the squash growing real well, it's probably indicative of a good manure
Well,
in the
good-
area.
Well, it's good soil, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be manure by now, it would be just plain good black dirt, you know.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
of course, what we did was, out in the field, you hauled the manure out there and put it on the field and help things grow.
Right.
It's the way life is.
What kind of crops did they grow out there at that time? Do you know?
No, that I wouldn't know.
Probably corn and oats and
Corn for sure,
oats probably.
and wheat, yeah.
Wheat, or at least those two anyway.
I'd say about those three.
Corn, oats, and wheat.
Yeah, I'd say about that, yeah.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I think for years afterwards, then they started barley. And you know the reason why they'd like to plant barley and sell it?
Oh.
Make beer.
Oh.
They,
Yeah.
they buy it and use it to make beer.
Hmm.
Barley was
Okay, so at the time that Eamon was born, then we mentioned, as far as the buildings go, we mentioned there was the old log cabin house and the old barn in its original location. Is that the only buildings that were there then? Were there were no other sheds or garages, or
as far as I know,
that was basically it then?
as far as I know, that would be basically it.
And of course, back in those days, of course, that was obviously before automobiles were invented, because they weren't invented until the turn of the century. So, I guess the way you got around back then was horse and buggy, basically. Is that?
Well, right through the middle of the yard was the I-94.
Yeah, the main road at the time.
Right through the yard and going through the woods on the north side was I-94.
Okay, so now that road, if you know that little, if you go, say north through the woods, just west, just west of the house, and that road that goes down there, is that part of the original road then, actually?
That is the original road.
Well, I never knew that. Nobody ever told me that.
I think I told you when I was out the other day that the road went right by the barn.
Yeah, you said it went by the barn, but I didn't realize that piece that went down there
Well,
was
that's
actually...
that's where it goes north.
Okay, so if you walk along the side of the road there, you can kind of, or the side of the barn where the barn used to be, you can kind of see where the road used to go along there then.
Actually, when we left the other day, I was wishing I could have stopped. When you turn in, on the left is where the barn was, and Mike and his, and on the right, you can see the ground goes down, and then it goes flat, and then it goes up. And
Yeah.
that's the old original road, and it's I don't know how. It must be a couple of feet down, but that was the main one. My grandfather used to go out when they'd come by, you know, and with their horses and everything, and he'd give them a drink.
Drink water from the well or something.
Well, I'd say more like your stronger water,
Oh.
like brew and.
Yeah, still or something or whatever.
Well,
it
at
is.
that time they do that, and they didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And he'd give it to them, and even out in the farm, they'd take some of them in and give them something to eat, and they were so glad to get it. And of course, you can imagine coming up from whatever it is, the cities, how long it would take. Be beyond. I think
Yeah.
it took one family out here, out in the western, I think it took them 2 weeks to come up from St. Cloud.
St. Cloud to where?
Here.
To Fergus?
To come up here from St. Cloud took 2 weeks.
Yes.
Well, they had cattle, and
Oh, yeah.
they'd push them and go along, and
So if you look to the right of where the barn used to be, you can actually see kind of indentation where that's the old original road that come up in
that's
that.
the old original road. But I wouldn't go down by the barn to do it. I'd go in when you go in, like I said. Go
Yeah.
in there, and on the left is where the barn was, and on the
Yeah.
right, of course, now it's grown up with, and the trees have kind of spread over it. But I'd like to have you gone over in there and taken your picture. But of course, you don't see it too good. It used to be just plain open, and then the woods. Now the woods has grown.
Kind of growing in that area a little
Not
bit.
kind of grown, and even more so.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get a chance to go back out there and look again, because that's interesting. I never realized that. And then, as you were saying, that the road actually goes right through the woods, and in fact, that original path through the woods, which is like a road, or or whatever, that is actually the original road.
Where it goes north through there.
Yeah, through the woods there, where
Yeah.
we walk down and
Yeah.
off to the left you'd have one of your old cars
Yeah.
parked over there.
Then it goes north, and then it went a little to the left, and then it went up, and it went to the left of that big slough north, and then it went just by Bocky's where they lived up there.
Huh.
Of course, at that time, there was no road on the west side, like it is now.
Oh yeah.
There'd be no road there at all.
Oh. So, I guess once you walk through the woods like that, and you get much past beyond the woods, I guess you can't really see where the road goes anymore because it's been plowed up and whatever like that, right?
Well, you mean north of the buildings?
Yeah, north. When you walk through the woods, you're walking down through the woods there, and you get past the woods. Once you get past that, you really can't see where the road goes anymore.
You mean on the north side of the farm?
Right.
No, that would be.
Because it's all plowed up.
That would
whatever
be.
from
Of
there
course,
on.
that would have been plowed for
Yeah.
years.
But it actually went over, kind of swung off the left a little bit and went over towards just to the right of some of the old slough over there, I guess you were saying.
The left of the slough.
Left of the slough, huh? So
Yeah,
it kind of
there's
swung
that
off the
big-
left and then went back to the left.
Yeah.
Did it actually, if you walk down the road there, or the trail, or whatever you want to call it, and then actually go off to the left, is that where the road went? Did it actually go off to the left there? Kind of
You mean on the north? You mean on the north side?
On the north side where it's kind of flat
Well,
there, actually? or-
it went north, and then of course it went just a little bit to the left.
Just a little bit.
It didn't go left. It went at an angle.
So if you walked all the way through the woods walking west, that necessarily wouldn't be where the road went, but it went a little ways to the left and then went back
No,
north
you
again.
walk through the woods going north.
Yeah,
Right.
originally when you're going downhill,
Yeah.
and you're walking downhill, but then you can go either to the right or to the left. What I'm trying to figure out is how far the original road actually went to the left. Apparently not very far.
It went down through the woods
Right.
like this, and then it just angled a little bit
Okay.
north. And of
Okay.
course, left and right here, that's something that developed
That
afterwards.
developed later. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Huh. Interesting. But you can, well, like you were saying, you still can see where the old road goes on the west side of the old barn there. Yeah.
Well, not only on the west, no. West side of the old barn is where we drove so many times. That wouldn't be it. It would be from the barn up to the road.
Okay.
In other words, when you go in, and on the left is the garden where Mike was in the old
Uh-huh.
barn, and on the right, all the way down to the barn,
This is the old road.
would be the old road.
You can kind of see that.
And you can see it as it was left.
Right. And then
But down by the barn, that's not as it was left because we used that.
you eventually developed that as a extension of the barn later on.
No, it was used as a road to get around and out in the field,
Oh,
all the
okay.
manure and everything.
Okay, so in other words, you just look at, you'd be able to see a certain section down going by the garage there, or
Yeah.
is it actually behind the garage, or
Yeah, it's on the west side of the garage.
west side of the garage?
Yeah.
Huh. You
And
can see
that
it
goes
go
all the way down to the
down the woods,
down to the barn.
basically where the front of the barn would start. Basically, and
Yeah,
after that,
yeah.
after that, you wouldn't really see
No,
it anymore.
no, that would be we use that all the time. Like I said,
Okay.
that's the way you got in the yard and
Right.
everything.
Okay. So then, beyond that point, you really wouldn't be able to see the old road anymore, probably until you whatever got way down south somewhere or something, or whatever.
Well, you can if you go out and look around, you can see a.
Well, I mean, on the Haarstad property there, you wouldn't really be able to see it in the pasture or anything like that, because that'll all be changed probably since then, or whatever. Probably
Well,
wouldn't be able to trace it
I
out.
don't know if you could see it or not. It might be a little reflection in there, but it's been worked so many years now. It wouldn't
Yeah.
be. It wouldn't amount to much, you know.
All right, well, that's interesting. Well, let's, that pretty much gives us a picture of what the farm area looked like, the buildings and the old road and so forth at the time that Eamon was born, he was born in 1881.
Yeah.
1881. So let's talk about Eamon now. He was the youngest of 5 of kids of Peter and Johanna. I guess Peter actually had 6. He had one other one, not by Johanna, but by somebody else, the maid or whatever. And so let's talk about Eamon now. You say he. Do you have any recollections of his childhood? Did he ever tell you about any stories or anything like that as he's growing up before going through school? Let's say prior to high school or even in high school or anything like that? You said he actually was the first one to go to school. Now, did he go all the way through high school or?
Well, no, I think he went to the college out here for a
Oh,
while.
he actually went all the way.
Yeah.
So he got a high school diploma and then he went to college.
Well, I don't know if you call it high school or not.
Uh huh.
That just exactly what you'd call it, I don't know. But he went to the college out here, and of course, then when my dad and mother came back from Oregon, why, and got on the farm, why, you know, he was worked with the telephone company, and he was a clerk at the school where I went to for years and took care of the, right, well, so he did a lot of, he was in the township board, and he was on so many things, and how many of them out there had been to school, even to start doing that?
Yeah.
Very few. So he was kind of the small one, the lucky one to have gotten schooling. Now it's
Now you say he went to college around here. You mean in Fergus?
yeah, I think it was around here.
What college would that be then?
What
I
they
guess
call
we're-
it then, don't even
I
ask.
guess we're not really talking about the junior college out here. Apparently, there was some other
Oh,
college.
no,
or
that
something.
junior college was built after my dad left this world.
Yeah, that was.
I'm
that's
talking
one of
about
the
out here, the one on Alcott.
Halcott, they used to have a college out there, huh?
Well, that's still there. Not
What-
used to have
What
it.
was it called today, or what is it today?
It's I know too so well, and then I can't even say it.
Not Hillcrest.
Hillcrest.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? That was the old college that you
Yeah.
went to, huh?
Hillcrest is what it is.
Oh, interesting. So what, did he graduate from college, or what kind of subjects did he take?
Well,
or?
I tell you, the best is not to ask me too many questions about just but he learned to write and learned things that a lot of people who hadn't been to school didn't know. Because, you know, out there at that time, how many of them, you know, could hardly write their name?
Yeah,
They didn't.
just put an X for their name or something, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess as far as the details of what kind of subjects you studied and so forth, you don't really know all that. You just know that he
No.
got educated as far as English and learning how to read and write.
And they didn't talk about that. That's
Yeah.
in the past. That's gone. Years ago, don't bring up the past. Even my mother too, you know, just talk about something in the back, you know, they just wanted to avoid it. That's the way people were. You know, now it's gotten so that they love history, but mother was one of the top ones in history, is coming from Ireland, you know. She was really up in history, but they still didn't want to talk about things so far back when they didn't even have cars.
Was that just something they were instilled in their childhood, kind of growing up that way?
It's the conditions that they lived in, which are totally different from now. You take kids in school now, you know, college or wherever it is, and you give them $10, they say, "Oh, you cheapie." You know, they just want $100 so they can go out spend it. Well, at that time, you know, if you had a nickel and saved up a nickel and we got into town, you thought that was pretty good. Then you bought yourself something for a nickel. But it's a change, John. Absolute change we go through.
So how old was Eamon when he got out of college? Do you have any idea? Or
No, that I wouldn't.
probably early 20s, you would imagine, or
No,
something like that.
See, they went to Portland, Oregon. They lived out there for 5 years. And he got to be he was a barber for a while, but upstairs up there, I'd like to find him again. There's 2 roles he's taken. And he used to work with the sheriff. I don't know what you'd call him at the time, deputy or what, but he'd haul prisoners, take them over the in the train from one town to another, and it'd be just nice to find this. Elaine left that damn light on out there. Will you turn? Elaine would. I don't like lights on it. Shines in my eyes. But anyhow, he hauled them, and it'd be just fun to get upstairs and find these rolls of what he wrote about some of these prisoners. But anyhow, his sheriff, the sheriff out there, was on the train, and he was at one end of a railroad car, and they stopped up on the top of the mountain, you know, checked the brakes, and a couple of robbers came in, and one of them had a big bag, and the other one had a gun, and he pulled out his gun, the sheriff, and he shot, and he, as far as I can remember, he killed one of them, and the robber shot at him and hit him in the badge, and saved his life. And I was out on the farm out there, and my dad was in the outhouse reading the newspaper, and here he read where this sheriff had died. And when I never forget him when he came out of that outdoor toilet and walked towards the house. He was absolutely upset when he read about how that sheriff had passed away.
And this was a sheriff that your dad was working on the train at the time, you were saying?
Oh, we won't go into at the time or when just when it was. This could be another. He worked with him, but whether he
worked with him at one point in time,
yeah,
on the train. He was actually what was he doing on the train again? What was his job? Or
my dad?
Yeah.
He hauled prisoners, took prisoners
Oh.
from one town to another, one jail to another.
So he was he like a constable, or I mean, did he have
That I wouldn't know what
or
they
he
call him.
just kind of was.
I don't know if you
along.
call him a deputy or what he was, but anyhow he.
There was this one sheriff that he worked with while he was hauling prisoners. It apparently was held up in a train robbery, and maybe your dad wasn't maybe with him at the time.
Well, that would only be an absolute guess.
Yeah.
No, my dad wasn't with him. I don't think, but that would be an absolute guess now.
But he got shot in the back, so he got lucky and got saved that
his
way.
life. Hit him in the badge.
And then he read about how he died. I guess he just died a natural death or whatever. And then he was
Well,
upset about
however
that.
it was, I suppose old age could be at that time.
And he was upset about that because he knew the sheriff pretty well.
But he knew the sheriff. He worked
yeah.
with him.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah. In fact, Mother remarked about it quite a few times. They bought 2 lots in Portland, Oregon. And Mother, I've heard her say this just many times. You know, when we left, we sold those lots. And she says, you know, that's downtown Portland, Oregon now. So what they would have gotten for them if they had kept them a little
And
longer.
held him on to him for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Could have gotten a lot more money for him, obviously.
I wouldn't say a lot more. Maybe they sold them for $200 and now they're worth $20,000. You know, or afterwards. What lots would be worth in Portland, Oregon, even at that time, it would be impossible to guess. But anyhow, the value of the lots just went straight up. As you can imagine, being downtown Portland, Oregon, you know darn well where it went. But anyhow, they sold them in 1915 when they left and came back here.
They probably sold them because I suppose they needed the money or
Well,
something like that.
if they came back and they got on the farm and you had to buy a piece of machinery, what the hell choice do you have?
Yeah, they didn't really have the option of holding on to it because they probably needed the money to start farming and so forth.
Yeah. See, they went out and took care of my grandfather.
Peter?
Yeah.
So he was out in Oregon?
No, they went to the farm
Oh,
out here
the
and
farm,
also
okay,
took
okay.
care of them. And of course, they came out there in 1915, and he passed away in 24. So he was out there about 9 years when they were there.
Okay.
And of course, and then they should have had the whole quarter of land, but they figured that Ivor finagled it, so he got more. And
they even had to pay him some money to get the 40 of the 160 acres
Yeah.
in, because apparently the deed for that 40 acres ended up in his name. However, with that.
However it was, I don't know who the hell, I don't know who all they had to pay, but he had to pay for it. So it doesn't matter who the hell took the money, it was the idea that they had it handed out.
Yeah.
It's
Well, let's talk about Eamon's childhood. Is there anything you remember about his childhood days, or going to school, or different things he did, or what he liked to do, what his hobbies were, or any stories you heard about him as he was growing up, say all between childhood and actually graduating from college or going to college?
well, anyhow, here.
And did he get in fights in school, or was he?
Here's his handwriting, you know. Nobody wrote like that.
picture of Dad's, of my granddad's handwriting, Eamon Haarstad. Pretty fancy handwriting.
Well, it's handwriting like you just didn't see.
So, right. So, is there anything that you could tell me about his childhood, growing up? Any stories you heard, or stories he told about, or anything that you can think of, or who he hung around with, or say from his childhood all the way up to college? Anything that you can think of?
Well, of course, if he maybe went to school, when he was born in 81, he'd be 19 years old, 1900.
Did he go to the same school that you did, or when you were a kid?
The school wasn't there then.
He went to a different school. Where was that at? Nearby, or?
The school that was out there where I went was a little building north of there, just by the Ole Fronting farm.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's been gone for so many years, you don't even want it.
The building doesn't even exist anymore.
Oh, well, you can see the fields there.
Yeah.
Where they plant grain.
I thought you showed me the school where you went to school there one time when I drove by.
Yeah. But that's not the school I'm talking about.
Oh, the one that Eamon went to school. Okay, right. That one doesn't exist anymore.
The school I went to was on this corner here. Right. This one would be north. And there's the Ole Fronting farm here. It would be just on the south side of the Ole Fronting farm.
So that just got old, dilapidated, and eventually got torn down, doesn't exist anymore.
It's been gone for so many years, yeah. I wouldn't even remember it.
And that's where Eamon went to school, I guess, what, kindergarten or grade school?
I would guess that that's where he had to go to school.
Yeah, even all the way up through high school or whatever they called it back then.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to somebody who understands more of what they called things years ago and haven't. It's just.
And then from there he went to Hillcrest, the college actually, some higher education there.
Yeah.
He just got pretty learned in English, of knowing how to read and write. And
yeah.
He studied.
Which was like I've said, not very common then.
Yeah. And as far as what other subjects he studied or whatever, we don't really know for sure what else he studied, but we know he was pretty good as far as studying English and reading and writing and so forth.
And all of that, No, most of them at that time out there were mainly concerned about keeping alive, having something to eat.
Yeah, just surviving mostly. And
surviving was
raising a family and keeping them housed and fed and clothed and whatever.
Yeah, well, and even at that, the clothing was beyond your. I mean, it was even. I think of the Frontings up there. They had overalls, and of course they'd have overalls, and that's what they had wherever they went, to church or anything. And of course, at that time, my dad, especially when he'd go to town, he'd dress up. And of course, people, women would never wear overalls. And if they went to town, any farmer, he'd want to try to have something else on. But what do they wear in church now? The women.
Yeah.
They wear overalls.
Yeah, things have changed.
Yeah, it's total change.
So what was the size of Fergus Falls at the time that Eamon was born? And I guess there really wasn't much of a town at that time. No. I mean, do you have any idea what the population was? Or
no, I wouldn't.
Pretty small, though, I guess.
I just wouldn't know.
Because Fergus Falls, I guess, was basically established by the Wrights, I guess, when they created the dam there, the central dam. Because I know the Undertale River had a very precipitous drop for about 300 feet going up to that central dam. So but that was, I think, the first dam that went in, and then Freiburg and some other dams, and harnessed the water power through there. I guess that's how Fergus Falls got started.
Broken down dam out there.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to go out and just look there now. The only thing is, when you go east, I drove there 2-3 weeks ago. I thought when I went out to Mike's, I thought I'd drive that way east on Mount Faith, and then you get into the gravel. And it's, I don't know how far it'd be 2-3 miles out there. And it's gravel. And it's like this, the gravel.
Yeah.
Terrible. I don't know how come they don't go out worked the road a bit, but it's just so damn bumpy that I got way out in there and I said, gee, I should turn around. And I thought, well, maybe it's closer off this to go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that old broken down dam, I guess that got wiped out by apparently a storm. I guess a big storm and some trees came down there and knocked it out or something like that. I think it was.
Something did that. I should remember what did it, but I don't.
So anyway, Fergus Falls was really not very big at the time. Maybe only had a population of, what, 1,000 or less, or 500?
That
Or
of course
don't really know for
you
sure.
know,
It's Friday, and I'm interviewing Mary Ann Haarstad. And,
Cardenas.
what'd you say?
Cardenas.
Oh. All right, Mary Ann Cardenas. And I was going to talk to her a little bit about what she knows about my great-grandfather Peter. And Dad was telling me his last name was, what was it again?
Tufblum.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
Tuftlum.
Tuftlum?
Yeah.
Tufblum. That's supposed to be his real name? His real Norwegian name? And how
Well, from what I understand, when you move from farm to farm in Norway, you would change your name to wherever the farm that you lived in.
Okay, so,
So if your name was Tuftlum on a certain farm and you moved to another farm, then your name supposedly changed to the name that they had on that farm. That's the way I understand how it worked way back then.
okay, so was that supposed to be his original name then? It's Tufblum?
That was the name he had when he came over to the United States, and then he changed it here.
Okay, but so then it may not have been his original name.
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't pursued it.
Okay, so do you know what part of Norway he was born in or anything?
You have to look at the records. I think it's Gudbrandsdalen.
You've got it in the records already, the records that you gave me earlier? Can you spell that?
Well, I
Just
can.
give it your best guess.
Gudbrandsdalen.
Okay. How do you pronounce that again?
Gudbrandsdalen.
Gudbrandsdalen. Okay, do you know what part of Norway that is?
I think it's towards the middle.
Like the middle central part of the country or something like
Yeah.
that? Okay, what can you tell us about the history of his history back in Norway? Is there anything at all you can tell about his parents? Do you know his parents' names or anything?
I think I have it written down. Oli and I don't remember her name.
Lena.
Lena?
I don't know,
Is it?
could be. You know,
That's
what
I
heard.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the family history in a long time, so.
Okay, but you've got it all written down, I guess. You've actually researched and found out what his parents' names were?
Well, I don't know if it's, I don't remember where I got the information, if it was from Pete or something else.
How far back were you able to go? Were you able to go farther back than just his parents, or was that about as far back as you could go?
That's as far back.
As you were able to research the records? Now, how did you research the records? Did you write to Norway or something?
I wrote to Ireland. I don't remember. Yeah, I did write to Norway. I wrote to Norway and I got...
Never be over. Kenneth Starr's investigation of the president would seem to be winding down, even as the independent counsel is making himself more visible than ever. But tonight, a woman who says every time her name is mentioned in connection with his investigation, she gets hit with another threatening letter from the special prosecutor's office. And for her, what began as a favor for a friend may yet, according to her lawyer, get her slapped with an indictment for perjury.
I am scared. I don't know what's happening. I have no control over my life. I don't know what's going to happen from one minute to the next, but it's always something worse every time.
Julie Hyatt Steele is a woman whose 15 minutes of fame was an unwanted consequence of doing a favor for a friend, and it could land her in jail. A Richmond, Virginia woman who's never met the president or Monica Lewinsky or Linda Tripp, and yet has the threat of indictment hanging over her head.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
She's gone from being a witness to a subject to a target in Kenneth Starr's investigation of President Clinton. And the mention of her name drew Kenneth Starr into a testy exchange with the president's lawyer, David Kendall, in last week's appearance before the House Judiciary Committee. This was only the beginning.
A witness named Julie Hyatt Steele. Have your investigators investigated the adoption of her 8-year-old child she adopted from a Romanian orphanage?
Mr. Kendall, my investigators work very hard and diligently to find relevant evidence.
Working hard to find relevant evidence is not how Julie Steele sees it. She believes Kenneth Starr wants to hear her say something and will do almost anything to get her to say it.
You don't think he wants the truth? I don't think that his approach with me has been a man searching out truth in any way, shape, or form.
You think he already felt he knew what the truth was?
I think the means justify the end in his case. I think that's the way it works. There'd be no discussion of my child's adoption. We wouldn't be hauling my tax records, phone records, credit card report, all of these things in here, talking to people I barely know, people I do know, neighbors, strangers. Truth would be, what does that do? It's intimidating. It's appalling. It's frightening.
It started 1.5 years ago. Julie Hyatt Steele was a very peripheral figure in the Paula Jones case. Reporters were getting tips about the president and other women. Newsweek's Michael Isikoff was ahead of the pack, tracking down one rumor to Richmond, Virginia. In the fall of 1993, Kathleen Willey was an unpaid volunteer in the White House social office. Thanksgiving weekend that year, she learned that her husband was in deep financial trouble. A longtime Clinton supporter, Willey made an appointment to ask the president for a job. That's when Willey says the president made an unwanted sexual advance. But Isikoff wanted a corroborating source.
My involvement in the story began with Kathy Willey calling and asking me to lie to Michael Isikoff, and I did so. That was a huge mistake.
This much is fact. Willey called from her lawyer's office and, in Isikoff's presence, arranged a meeting.
And I said, you are going to tell me why he's coming, right? You're going to call me, right?
Minutes later, with Isikoff already on his way over, Steele says Willey called a second time. You didn't have a long time to talk, so
no.
In what must have been a short conversation, what did she say?
It was to tell him that she had come to my house from the train station, hurt, humiliated, crying, upset, as a result of, 2, being groped in the White House, 3, that the president had pulled on some piece of clothing. I didn't get that one right.
Steele says this was the first time she'd ever heard the tale, and says Willey promised to explain it all later. Isikoff arrived at her home, and they talked.
He said, she came to your house that night, and I said, yes. You know, she was really upset and crying, which is what she'd said, and humiliated. And what did she tell me? And it was that she'd been groped. Oh, I said grapple.
You said grapple?
I was just nervous, and I didn't know what I was talking about.
Had you been given the specific words to use?
Yes, grope.
Steele says it was supposed to be off the record, but Isikoff, who was also now an NBC News consultant, was taking notes.
And I told him, if in this lifetime you have any reason to even think you want to write something with this, we are off the record, you need to call me first. And he agreed that he would do that. And as it worked out, he did.
Indeed, several months later, as Isikoff was fact-checking his story, Steele recanted and told him she'd lied. Relieved, she thought the whole thing would just go away.
Then something he said made me realize, wait a minute, he's going to print this. And I said, surely, you don't mean that you're going to print an off-the-record retraction of an off-the-record story. And then he said, now, Julie. But he explained to me it wasn't his fault. It was beyond him. It was too big to not print. And that he had to go with it. He was under pressure.
How do the lawyers put it, strange credulity, that you could talk to a Newsweek reporter while he's taking notes and think that it was off the record.
Well, I've never talked to a major reporter in my entire life. He told me it was off the record, and I believed it was so.
The August 11, 1997 issue of Newsweek hit the stands. Both versions of her story were included. She subsequently sued Isikoff. Isikoff says because of the lawsuit, he can't comment. Newsweek insists both Steele conversations were on the record and calls Steele's claims pure fantasy. But did Isikoff talk to Willey and her lawyer, Dan Gecker, off the record? Newsweek wouldn't say. Like it or not, Steele was now on the record, and she quickly found a buyer for a photograph in her possession of Willey and the president. The National Enquirer paid $7,000.
That's really regret number 2. I got down there and realized this was a big mistake. knee-jerk reaction.
And in January, she was drawn further into the Paula Jones case. She agreed to provide an affidavit for President Clinton's lawyers, saying Kathleen Willey had asked her to lie. Do you regret giving that affidavit?
No, I had told the truth, and I needed to tell the truth again in the place that mattered most.
Now, an affidavit would be given under oath.
Correct.
Would it not?
Right.
You can't lie.
Correct.
If you lie, it's perjury.
Well, right.
Kathleen Willey has said she believes Steele was pressured to change her story. Is that what Kenneth Starr thinks? Is he looking for evidence that someone enticed or intimidated her into changing her story? With all the resources available to them, wouldn't the special prosecutor be able to establish whether Kathleen Willey made that second phone call from her car phone to your home?
I would feel certain they could.
But if there was definitive proof that no phone call came to you, you lied.
Well, that's fine, Jane, but I didn't lie, and there's going to be a phone call from somewhere to me after I spoke with her with Isikoff.
Meanwhile, Steele says, Starr's investigators have scrutinized everything else about her so relentlessly, they've made her life miserable.
It just keeps getting worse. That's the thing. It just keeps getting worse.
She was neither the witness to, or the victim of, or the alleged perpetrator of a crime. Yet, she's been investigated as though she was at least one of those things, if not the perpetrator.
Steele's lawyer, Nancy Lukey, also represents the Clinton-Gore 96 election committee. She says Starr's investigators have subpoenaed Steele's tax records, tax accountant, bank and phone records, friends, neighbors, her daughter, her brother, even men she's dated. Why does Julie Hyatt Steele figure as prominently as she has come to in this case?
I think that's the $64,000 question. It appears that over the last few months, she's stood in the way of Starr's being able to refer the Kathleen Willey matter.
Here's one complication. Linda Tripp, who would later deliver